All right, so we back up in this thing with another one. China's response to Trump imposing tariffs. Let's see what they talking about.
And breaking this morning, one trade war is on after the U.S. retreated from two others. The Wall Street Journal declared this morning Trump blinks on tariffs against Canada and Mexico after receiving concessions the countries had largely agreed to weeks or months ago. But China is a different story. A 10% tariff on Chinese imports went into effect at midnight. China retaliated immediately, a 15% tax on U.S. coal, 10% on U.S. crude oil, and large displacement cars and pickup trucks. Also, an investigation into Google for allegedly violating their anti-monopoly regulations. So this...
An investigation into Google. Now that's interesting. I ain't heard nothing about that one. I knew everything. I was expecting everything else. Like, of course, you tax us, we gonna tax y'all more. But an investigation into Google
is the back and forth over just the last few hours. Let's get right to CNN's Elena Treen at the White House. Mark Stewart standing by in Beijing. Elena, first to you. This is a trade war, the one that Donald Trump has not backed off from.
That's exactly right. And as you mentioned, John, the president's widespread 10% tariffs on all of Chinese goods went into effect at 12:01 this morning. We saw Beijing immediately retaliate with a barrage of their own measures. But look, this 10% figure is a far cry from the 60% figure we know that the president repeatedly talked about and threatened to levy on China throughout his time on the campaign trail. And it really signals that if the two countries cannot come to some sort of deal, we could see these tariffs increase even further. Now, we did hear the president kind of speak to this yesterday while in the Oval Office. Take a listen to how he put it.
Over 85.
So, not surprised China hit back with a tariff of their own at all. And it just said that there's going to be a trade review in April anyway. So it's like 2-3 months away. So it's like, I feel like they might stall. If anything, I feel like both sides might just try to stall until then. And then they'll just have other people agree with what it is that, whatever. And it also said that China filed a complaint with the World Trade Organization. That's interesting.
We'll have some good meetings with China. We have meetings planned, and we'll see what happens. But that was just an opening salvo. If we can't make a deal with China, then the tariffs will be very, very substantial.
So you heard him, John, say that this is just an opening salvo. Now, look, we do know that the president is expected to speak directly with Chinese President Xi Jinping in the coming days. Unclear exactly when that will happen. But the key question, of course, is whether or not we could see some sort of swift deal come into place, just like we saw the president reach with both Canada and Mexico tariffs, of course, which were supposed to also go into effect at 12:01 today. But they were able to push that off for a month while the two sides continue to speak. Now, one thing as well that I know I'm picking up on in my conversations is how different Republicans could respond to a deal like that. We know many Republicans, particularly those on Capitol Hill, are a bit skeptical right now of whether the president is still just as hawkish on China as he has been in the past. It seems, if he is willing to make a deal with Xi Jinping, and maybe if these tariffs end up seeing an off-ramp like he had with the other countries, we could be hearing a lot of criticism from some of the hawks on Capitol Hill.
Yeah,
John?
that will be one interesting dynamic to watch for sure. Elena, stand by. Let's go to Mark Stewart in Beijing. And Mark, Elena used the term opening salvo because that's what President Trump said. And I think we get the sense this morning that China could have done a lot more, but is keeping some of its powder dry.
China could have done a lot more. In fact, I was discussing with a colleague earlier today, the one item that is not on this tariff list are soy products, which are very important to China because of the big pork industry here. If that were to be on the list, that could have a big impact. But we've been going through this list, and a lot of focus is on energy sources. No question those are important, but if you look at the Chinese economy, China gets energy from so many other places beyond the United States, such as the Middle East, such as Russia. So in many regards, this is a symbolic move. In fact, the list also includes American pickup trucks, which are not a very popular item among American consumers. Something that did catch our attention, though, is that China is targeting two U.S. companies on a corporate level, putting them on what's known as a list known as the Unreliable Entities List. Two companies, including one, PVH, which has Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, two very well-known brands under its heading. China, in the most simple of terms, is saying that these companies are not following the rules, and that if China wants to, it can punish it and take action on its investments, its imports, its exports, its worker visas. That could be very detrimental. Still waiting to hear from these companies exactly if they have been notified and how that will play out. But this phone call that we've been talking about between these two leaders is going to be crucial because it will determine where this compass goes. Now that China has retaliated, will the White House throw back more tariffs back at China, or is the table going to be open for negotiation? When these two leaders last talked 2 weeks ago on a phone call, China talked about a fresh new start. We'll have to see if that language holds in this upcoming communication, John.
Yeah, we will see if China can get the same results that Canada and Mexico did from the United States, and likewise. All right, Mark Stewart in Beijing, or thanks to Elena Treen as well.
New this morning, should not be a big surprise. Stock futures dipping lower once again, this time after China hit back at the U.S. with retaliatory tariffs. Beijing doing this in response, of course, to President Trump's 10% tariff on Chinese imports. Thank goodness we've got CNN's Matt Egan here. Those numbers don't look so terrible. They certainly don't look like what we saw 24 hours ago when Mexico and Canada were in the line of fire. That has since subsided, but what is being targeted in China? And when you look at that, how might that affect not just the markets, but all of us?
Well, look, Sarah, China's hitting back. Not shocking, pretty predictable, actually. And yet this is going to raise some concerns about a broader U.S. China trade war. So overnight, China laying out their retaliatory tariffs. They said that February 10th, they're going to impose a 15% tariff on coal and liquefied natural gas that's coming from the United States, 10% tariff on crude oil, agriculture machinery, and some vehicles. But that's not all. They're also going to impose new export controls on metals. They're adding 2 U.S. companies to a sanctions list, including the parent company of Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein, and they're launching this anti-monopoly Google investigation. So when you put it all together, this looks like a relatively measured response from China.
Oh, right? So are they claiming that Google's the monopoly? If that's the case, I think I can understand that.
Done more, and yet this does open the door to a potential tit-for-tat situation because the executive order that President Trump signed the other day includes specific language that says that if China hits back, then the president can up the tariffs as well. So this is heating up, U.S. and China, even as the North American trade tensions, thankfully, are cooling down, right? With hours to spare, yesterday, Trump delayed for 1 month the tariffs on Canada, 25%, the tariffs on Mexico as well. He says he's satisfied with some of the commitments that Canada and Mexico have made, although there is some debate over how groundbreaking those commitments are. The Wall Street Journal put out an op-ed where they said that Trump blinked on the North American tariffs, and they said that none of this means that tariffs are some genius power play. They said that the tax, this 25% border tax, could return in a month if Mr. Trump is in the wrong mood or if he doesn't like something that the foreign leaders have said or done. So, look, Sarah, clearly Tariff Man is back, right? The tariffs are back.
I mean, he said it's only for a month to see if they actually play fair, and I think that's kind of fair, where it's like, I'm not going to completely recede on my request until I know for a fact that whatever compromise is fully going to be made 100% like good on. I don't think that's out of pocket. The whole tariff thing out of itself might be a little crazy, but once you did already impose it, I feel like, I don't know.
Up, they're dialed down, they're paused, they're ramped up. So much chaos and confusion for consumers, for investors, CEOs. The market hates that completely.
So when it comes to consumers and American consumers in particular, when you see things like oil and coal, I mean, we're talking about energy prices potentially. What could they experience with this?
Yeah, look, even the president has acknowledged that there could be some pain from this trade battle. We've heard that from economists and trade experts again and again. Now, to put a finer point on it, the Peterson Institute put out some new research where they said that the typical family is going to get hit by $1,200 per year. This is from the tariffs that were just imposed on China and the ones that could come in a month on Canada and on Mexico. And look, the less money you make, the more you're going to feel this. This research finds that if you are in the bottom 20% of earners, this is going to eat up about 3% of your paycheck. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, that is something you're going to notice, much less, just barely 1% of the top 20% of earners. And if you're in the top 1%, you're not even going to notice this at all. So just another reminder here, right? I mean, people are still hurting from high prices at the grocery store, rent, insurance. This could add insult to injury.
It is going to get rough if it doesn't get sorted out, Matt Egan. I think the other countries like China and Mexico, especially Mexico and Canada, thinking with friends like this, who needs enemies? Like at this point, when economically, this is a big deal. Matt Egan, thank you so much.
I mean, across the board, it's going to affect the money everywhere. Because even with China putting this tariff and tax on stuff, the amount of stuff that's coming over is probably going to slow down. With them putting tariffs and taxes on China, the amount of stuff coming over is probably going to slow down. And then for the fact that it's slowing down and more expensive, it's just going to cost more for the consumer anyway, because the company is not going to say, oh, we're selling slower and we're selling less, let's cut the price. No, we have margins to meet, and no business is doing well if they're decreasing prices. So it's all just going to happen faster. Don't take my word for it. I'm not an economist. I don't study the economy. I don't study money. But I do like money. And I'm a business savvy man. But hey, go ahead, hit that like and share button. Subscribe if you want to stay hip to what's going on and get a breakdown from a regular American person. I'll try and put it in layman's terms for everybody. Let's get it. Let's go. Your boy Diesel out.